1987, Ronald Reagan said, "Tear down this wall."
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
But it was baby Jessica's fall down a well that kept audiences glued to their TVs. Aretha Franklin became the first woman inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And the face of animation changed forever with The Simpsons' debut on The Tracy Ullman Show. Michael Douglas was the new king of the box office with Fatal Attraction and Wall Street, while Hollywood looked back on the Vietnam War with Full Metal Jacket and Good Morning Vietnam. Romance took an unusual turn with Moonstruck and Raising Arizona, while Predator and RoboCop delivered action thrills.
1987 was really a boom market for movies. You saw blockbusters doing well, huge takes at the video store, just more movies than ever, which really signaled the coming 90s massive boom in feature films produced.
By 1987, it had been more than a decade since America had pulled out of Vietnam, and I think you see a film like Full Metal Jacket reflect on that aftermath.
The title of the film, Full Metal Jacket, actually refers to a type of bullet casing that was used because in the Geneva Conventions, you would want a bullet to pass through someone with, little harm and damage. The absurdity of having, these kinds of safety measures during war, I think is what the film is really kind of exploring.
One of the things Stanley Kubrick does in more than one of his movies is you feel yourself kind of going crazy along with one of the POV characters. There's something about the relentlessness of the tone, the non-stop R. Lee Ermey performance. There's something about just how closed this bunk environment is that by the time Vincent D'Onofrio goes insane, I feel like I have too.
One of the greatest discoveries of Full Metal Jacket is actor R. Lee Ermey. At the time, he was a consultant on a lot of films. He was a drill instructor, and he often worked on films just helping people kind of present a drill instructor. But he realized that if he kind of worked hard enough, he could show that he could be in the film.
And the way I see it, ladies, you owe me for one jelly donut. Now get on your faces. Open your mouth. They're paying for it, you eat it!
Kubrick says that his dialogue is about 50% improvised, and they really worked on it together because he was just able to come up with such good ideas and such good turns of phrase.
Stanley and the writers would take just the best lines out of these 4 or 5 takes and integrate those into the already existing screenplay. We did this with almost every scene. That's where we get the authenticity, the power of each scene, I think.
There's a weird misconception that somehow the second half of Full Metal Jacket is bad, and this is because the first half of Full Metal Jacket flaunts perfection in a way. Every camera movement is perfect. It's all about these perfect formations of men standing in their barracks, and the performance by R. Lee Ermey is so flamboyant, just this, volley of insults.
It's a bit of an unusual and surreal movie, but it has this deep emotional truth. It kind of feels like you are going through boot camp and you are going through Vietnam, even if something feels kind of off.
In 1987, The Vampire is undergoing a major rebrand for the MTV generation. Out is the royalty and the aristocracy that's defined so many vampire stories since the beginning of cinema, and in are the outcasts and the social dregs in The Lost Boys and Near Dark.
Putting out a vampire movie in the mid to late 80s is kind of a dicey proposition because there is so much competition. And Near Dark is the grittiest, darkest, nastiest version of all these vampire movies. And I think because we're sitting in the glossy 80s, that's why it doesn't really get its due.
One of the low-key superstars of Near Dark is DP Adam Greenberg. He's somebody who doesn't get a lot of respect because he mostly worked in genre. In fact, his only Oscar nomination was for Terminator 2. But he really understood darkness here. You see a kind of odd, dreamlike darkness. This is an incredibly beautiful film.
The fact that it's gritty and grimy might put off some audiences, but it takes a real level of skill and cinematography to make things look grungy and lived in and dirty, but still read on screen. You see this really well in the shootout scene at the motel, where as bullets are being fired into this dark room, shafts of light are appearing that are, of course, dangerous and deadly for the vampires.
You know what I miss? I miss a good old-fashioned car chase, and this movie is so full of these like wild stunts and cars crashing. And I think that's what I love about early Kathryn Bigelow action films, is that they are so packed with actual action.
Near Dark is one of those vampire films also that kind of shies away from the lore. Like, you don't get a lot of like garlic and crosses and holy water. It's very kind of ambiguous as to what the actual rules are.
This was not a commercial success, but it really found its audience. And I think one of the reasons is this stripping of the glamour and making it as gritty and realistic as possible.
The Lost Boys is kind of like two movies in one, where on one hand you get this preteen spooky horror movie where you have Sam and the Frog Brothers getting up to these hijinks trying to hunt vampires. On the other hand, you have this really fun, cool, sexy vampire movie about how great it is to party all night and sleep all day and wear leather jackets and just be really sexy forever.
One of the most important things about The Lost Boys to me is the fact that it brought the two Coreys together. That's Corey Feldman and Corey Haim. And they actually don't share as many scenes as you think that they do, but you can definitely see the chemistry between the two of them. And I love that they would go on to do so many other movies together.
As someone who grew up loving and idolizing Corey Haim, I just loved his character so much, and I just found him so immensely watchable. And of course, when he joined forces with Corey Feldman, it really feels like something special when you just see them both sharing the screen together, both bouncing lines off of each other. There's such an energy to it, and there's such a sense of kind of sarcastic fun to it that they just play off each other so beautifully.
You think we just work in a comic book store for our folks, huh?
Actually, I thought it was a bakery.
This is just our cover. We're dedicated to a higher purpose. We're fighters for truth, justice, and the American way.
Right. There is so much to love about Joel Schumacher's The Lost Boys, from its set design, to its costuming, to its music, to its cast.
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that with Lost Boys, Joel Schumacher completely changed how vampires were going to be portrayed for the next many decades in film.
Who would win in a fight between RoboCop and The Predator? If you're looking at box office since 1987, it's The Predator by about $50 million. It's kind of astounding that we got both titans of science fiction in the same year.
I think you got a sense in 1987 that America had a lot of anxieties in terms of their foreign policy. And the concern that this deadly force was out there that they couldn't beat is very much a theme in Predator.
When I finally watched Predator as an adult, I was absolutely delighted. And it's not necessarily because of all the cast members that you might think I'm charmed by. It's because of the Predator himself. He's such an iconic villain. Number one, he can make himself invisible. Number two, he has green blood. Number three, he can mimic people's voices. He's just like so cool.
The visual effects of Predator are incredible. This movie is an action masterpiece. Watching Arnold square up against one of the most cool-looking aliens on film is so entertaining.
Predator still holds up today because the Predator is awesome. But I think also what holds up is just the beauty and presence of Schwarzenegger. He is perfect in this film. He is fun. It's not over the top. He's charismatic, he's badass, and he's in his perfect sculpted cinematic form.
What's the matter? The CIA got you pushing too many pencils? Huh?
I think that if an alien were to come to Earth and hunt human beings, he would probably want to hunt Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1987. That would sort of be like the big game of movie stars. Schwarzenegger is so great in Predator because he's just there hanging around until he's the last guy.
It's an amazing battle between this primal force and this alien technology, and the human primal force wins over. And I think that's really what makes the movie kind of really interesting, is this kind of dynamic between the human essence versus like an alien technology-based kind of enemy.
Paul Verhoeven's RoboCop is a satire that really looks at the militarization of policing, but also the corporatization, which also shows the ways how those in power will rule over others while ensuring that their own crimes go scot-free.
I think that RoboCop is a movie that made by anybody else would only kind of be worth talking about. I think all the things in that script and that material about politics and the failing auto industry and the, privatization of the police force in America, he brought out everything that was comical and carnivalesque about them. Verhoeven is someone who is not above anything in his movies.
It's not just this action and incredible violence. It's almost an opera about the tragedy of this one particular character and how the system fails him and how he's so abused. And the genius of Verhoeven is that he can make these entertaining action films, and he can thread these important concepts and these really weighty issues about policing and violence and city corruption into them.
You can't talk about RoboCop without mentioning how revolutionary the special effects were in that film. On one hand, you have the design of RoboCop and Ed 209, and then you also have the immaculate stop-motion effects. And I know that sometimes people can look at stop-motion effects now and it can look a little bit dated, but I feel like those level of effects never look dated because they're actually real and not just computer-generated graphics. For that reason, I feel that whether it's 40 years, whether it's 100 years later, the special effects in RoboCop will always look absolutely phenomenal.
I think RoboCop is one of those films that decades later still holds up, and especially in an era where we now have AI being very prominent in human surveillance. The fantasy, the satire of 87 now feels almost like a documentary reality.
Fatal Attraction is almost exclusively responsible for the creation of the psychosexual thriller genre. This film is very much about what do we know about the people that we sleep with, and why is it that so many people get away with adultery and never see any kind of consequence?
In Fatal Attraction, Glenn Close's character Alex is the literal villain. This movie is right in that Reagan era of, sort of social regressive attitudes, where Anne Archer, who plays Michael Douglas's wife, she's signified with, the home and the suburban family. She's the country house. She's the homemaker. And Glenn Close's Alex is the businesswoman. She's the woman who has her loft in the city. She's the exact opposite of that.
We don't love this movie in the same way if we don't have Glenn Close playing Alex. I mean, this defines her career for so long. She makes this so unique, so definitive, so driven, so intense, so scary. It's almost like she's a shark. Like, this is the Jaws of the dating world of the 80s, where she has her prey and she's just gonna go for it relentlessly.
Don't you think I understand what you're doing? You're trying to move him into the country, and you're keeping him away from me. And you're playing happy family.
Glenn Close's character starts off so confident, and it really draws you in. You're like Michael Douglas as the prey, and then slowly you see it revealed how much pain she's in, how lonely she is, how desperate she is. But when you really look at the movie, it's always been there. It's always bubbling under the surface, even when she's at her best.
Feminists had a real problem with this film, rightfully so. But one thing I will give it is that Glenn Close really performs this character well. She really tries to give it some weight, some complexity, and I think in her mind, this was not a monster. It was just a complicated woman who really couldn't regulate her emotions and ended up self-destructing because of it.
Moonstruck by Norman Jewison, for me, is a perfect film. And it's a film that felt very much out of its time when I first saw it. It's a film that seems like it would be more at home in an earlier Hollywood studio picture from like the 30s or the 40s, or like a big Italian comedy, because it has all of this energy from an ensemble cast. And you have Cher, you have a very young Nicolas Cage, Olympia Dukakis.
It works because everybody is committed to how big this movie actually is. It is so over the top, it is so theatrical, it is so big and beautiful.
All right, the engagement is off.
In time, you will see that this is the best thing.
In time, you'll drop dead and I'll come to your funeral in a red dress.
Loretta,
What?
will you marry me? What?
Norman Jewison really always wanted Cher for the main role in Moonstruck, but she was very reluctant. She wasn't Italian, she wasn't sure she could pull that off, but everyone kind of told her that for some reason the script just said Cher. Even Olympia Dukakis told her, you know, if you do this, you will win an Oscar, and she was right.
I almost didn't do this film. I mean, everybody knows that, because I just didn't think, first of all, I thought it was going to be really a difficult film to make and make good. And then when I saw it and I thought it was really a great movie, a sweet movie, I thought there is no audience in America for this film. I was more surprised than anyone else. I just think that it's like old-fashioned movies that are so gentle and sweet and kind and not about what's happening in our country today.
I love Cher in Moonstruck, but I really love Olympia Dukakis. She is given her own love story, and she is the character that is closest to my heart. She knows that her husband is cheating on her, and she's heartbroken, and you really see her kind of pull herself up by her bootstraps in this movie.
There is so much depth to the acting and to the characterization, and I think you see that so clearly in one of the final confrontations at the dinner table in the home, where Olympia Dukakis demands that her husband stop cheating on her.
Have I been a good wife?
Yeah.
I want you to stop seeing her.
Norman Jewison is really good at harnessing sort of the raw charisma of this cast. It's almost a film that should be overflowing with over-the-top scenes and performances, but it becomes so charming and so endearing under his direction.
By 1987, Hollywood's image of the 1960s was being questioned a lot more and punctured a lot by films and filmmakers who actually grew up in the 60s and experienced it a bit more than the Hollywood filmmakers at the time.
You could look at Dirty Dancing and say it's just populist fare, but it had a grittiness to it and some social commentary. You see that especially in the fact that there is an abortion in this film.
I think the secret sauce of Dirty Dancing is the script by Eleanor Bergstein. It really taps into, the coming of age feels that we have as young women when we're trying to find ourselves, but it also speaks to real issues that face women and people in general. There is the abortion storyline for sure, but there's also this thread about class.
I think that one of the reasons this movie is so beloved is that Jennifer Grey, playing Baby, is that magical word that Hollywood is always looking for, relatable. There are so many women who could see themselves in Baby. She's obviously more beautiful than the average person, but she's not more beautiful than the average movie star. So she looked like a person that you would know. That scene where she puts her arm over his head, they're practicing dancing, and he runs his hand seductively down her side, and she can't stop laughing because she's ticklish. Apparently she's actually ticklish, and that was really happening in real time, and the irritation on his face is real irritation because they're at the end of their day and they want to move on. If you don't fall in love with that girl while those scenes are happening, you shouldn't be at the movies, really, because you're not responding.
Patrick and Jennifer were not the most friendly. They kind of had a history from the audition stage where they didn't really like each other, but I think that sort of mild hatred worked really well for the characters, because at the beginning of the movie, Johnny and Baby are not really sure how to deal with each other or how to interact with each other, and then they grow to love each other.
You gotta concentrate. Is that your idea of fun?
Oh, yes, as a matter of fact, it is. We're supposed to do the show in 2 days. You won't show me lifts. I'm not sure it turns. I'm doing all this to save your ass. What I really want to do is drop you on it.
I think Dirty Dancing is kind of far and away one of the best summer movies. It's a great movie about vacation, the kind of magic of being somewhere else, summer love, and it really portrays this realistic but kind of amazing and fantastic vacation.
By 1987, we were all in dire need of a corrective to a very idealistic version of the late 1960s. The characters in Withnail and I are not concerned with world peace or meditation or flower power. They're actually just aspiring actors. They want to get ahead and they want to get loaded, like all the time.
When British people want to show off their city, they tend to go for the rough and tumble, probably the stronger reality of what it's like to actually live there. Certainly back in the 60s as well, it probably wasn't the most hygienic at times. I think that's just a testament really to how well the production design did, how well, the clothing was, but the attitude of everybody in that film as well.
It's a comedy about desperation, and the beauty of the film is that you can point a camera at Richard E. Grant and you get magic no matter what he's doing. But nobody knew that until they saw Withnail and I. So you are watching this tall scarecrow of a man, this desiccated maniac, become a movie star right in front of you.
Put on the gloves. Don't attempt anything without the gloves. What is it? What have you found? Matter?
This is Richard E. Grant's first movie. People had not seen Richard E. Grant. They had not heard that voice. I think he is not only so funny, but he has such a strange performance. He's often like teary-eyed, red-eyed. He is acting so high class, but looking so disheveled. It's a really amazing performance, and people who are unfamiliar with him must have just been blown away.
People think that Withnail and I is nostalgic for the 60s, and it is, in fact, the opposite. It is sending up the sort of self-satisfied boomer decade that was supposed to be the decade of optimism. There's that great line that Ralph Brown says about hippie wigs being available at Woolworth, which pretty much says it all about where the decade's idealism has brought the generation.
Withnail and I is, I suppose, a story about misspent youth. It's about a friendship that's really just grounded in a sense of mutual desperation. And when one of those two parties is ready to move on from that state of desperation, what's left of that friendship?
Holly Hunter was a working actress and a theater actor, but in 1987 managed to have 2 lucky breaks that were so big she won the National Critics Association Award for Best Actress.
Raising Arizona is a feat of a film. It is a cartoon made real. It has so much energy and heart and excitement, and Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter are incredible. They do such a good job of embodying these hopeful, kind, and flawed people in pursuit of a dream, trying to grapple with the bad decisions they made to get there.
The way the Coen brothers are able to balance slapstick humor with heavy existential themes and feelings that are universal and tragic, that's the Coen brothers for you.
One scene that really sticks out for me in Raising Arizona is the armed robbery scene over a box of Huggies. That particular sequence, you could take that out of the entire film and just make it its own short film. Everything Cage puts into it, everything that Holly Hunter puts into it, and everything the Coen brothers put into it, where they kind of make the camera its own character in it. That is just this perfect collision of everything that all of those people do so well together in one absolutely perfect 5-minute sequence.
Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in. That son of a bitch. That son of a bitch.
The Coens are such wonderful filmmakers that they visualize the American dream as a dream. And I think this is the sweetest dream in any of their movies, which is everything in the movie that goes wrong gets put right. It's exactly the way that a very innocent, kind of naive guy's subconscious would reckon with everything he's done. So You can say that it's a goofy movie and a silly movie and a ridiculous movie. It's all of those things. It's also a very profound movie, which is why people love it so much, and I'm one of them.
Holly Hunter's stardom in 1987 is an interesting thing to watch develop because she's this very relatable, accessible girl next door kind of figure. And nowhere is this appeal more important than in the absolutely phenomenal, perfect movie, Broadcast News. And Broadcast News is essentially about the relationship between an actor and a director and a producer.
Broadcast News is one of the greatest films about insecurity. You're essentially seeing three characters who are very good at what they do, but are eaten up by this doubt they have in themselves. They may have a weakness or two, but their big weakness is just not understanding how to kind of maximize what they're good at and make that a part of their entire lives.
Watching the dynamics between Tom, Erin, and Jane is quite fascinating because Jane is a woman that is doing very well in her field, but she's a little unlucky when it comes to love. And even though Tom represents everything that she kind of despises, she can't help but fall for him. Jane is trying to seduce Tom early on, but Tom only really wants to know about how she does what she does and how to succeed in this industry. And that dynamic adds a lot of comedic tension.
I agree with you. You're not qualified, so get qualified. You can insist on being better prepared. You don't have to just leave it with, I don't write, I'm not schooled, I don't understand the news I'm reading, but at least I'm upset about it, folks.
Jane believes so strongly in what she's doing and in the value of what she's doing, and the movie never tries to take that away from her. It actually celebrates a character that's really interested in her job and likes her job and thinks her job is worth doing, and I find that that's kind of a rarity in Hollywood.
Broadcast News stands out in a special way amongst 80s rom-coms because it has kind of an uncomfortable ending. It's not about falling in love. A lot of it's about realizing the person you have a crush on is wrong for you. And that's heartbreaking and emotional, but like, can you still have a relationship after that?
I've heard The Mermaid Singing is sort of a keynote movie of what you might call the Toronto New Wave. You see a lot of European art cinema, and I've heard The Mermaid Singing. You also see a lot of Canadian literary culture and Canadian film culture and just what Toronto was like in the 80s, this sort of utopian, competitive artists' playground.
What's great about this film is it really understands how much of a nightmare it is to apply for a job and to start a new job and to learn about a new industry. And it's such a great device how we, the audience, are learning about this world in the same way that she is.
The character of Polly could very easily be deeply, deeply annoying and a little too twee and a little too quirky, but that Sheila McCarthy performance is so heartbreaking and so real and so authentic of a human being who is so deeply uncomfortable in her own body, in who she is open to the idea of loving, that you kind of embrace her entirely.
I don't think I wanted kissing and all that stuff. I just loved her. I guess I'll be leaving for the day.
Yeah, sure. When I had the opportunity to interview Patricia Rozema, we talked a little bit about the lead character's sexuality. There's an idea around a lot of academic texts about the film which talk about Polly as asexual because she can't fully comprehend her emotions or act on her emotions, but to Patricia, she spoke to it as kind of a pre-sexuality or almost like a pubescent character who's for the first time coming into the realization that they might feel attraction to someone.
There weren't mainstream movies that had queer themes. There weren't movies that just followed people around talking about art, not in Canada. It's a really lovely film, and it is the very definition of a small movie, but that's not a bad thing. If you tell a story well enough and specifically enough, it becomes universal, and you can connect to everybody, which is exactly what happened.
Fantasy films were big box office in the 1980s, but few films were as self-reflexive and kind of crazy as The Princess Bride.
The Princess Bride is one of those examples of a movie that is as good or better than the book, and there's two reasons for that: Rob Reiner and William Goldman. William Goldman was the writer of the original novel, and he was the one who adapted it into a screenplay. So you can really feel him carrying a lot of the original energy, the original whimsy into the film itself.
When movies are talked about as quotable, I always think that it needs to be held to the standard of The Princess Bride. One of the most well-known quotes from this movie is, "My name is Inigo Montoya, you killed my father, prepare to die." And watching Mandy Patinkin use that throughout the film and have it crystallize into this anger and pain directed at the man who actually killed his father is so emotionally effective and entertaining.
Hello. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Inigo Montoya might weirdly be Mandy Patinkin's greatest on-screen role, even though it's one of his first. He's obviously a great actor, but there's just something about this role, the emotion, the physicality, and also, you know, he's famously kind of performing some of the best sword fighting ever committed to film. It's kind of this amazing performance that just contains it all.
Offer me money. Yes. Power to promise me that. All that I have and more.
Sometimes it feels like Rob Reiner doesn't really get his due as a great director, but he had one of the best runs through the 80s, and this is no exception. The fact that he is able to know how to make this feel like a sensitive romance, and then when he shifts gears into it being an action movie, and then shifts gears into it being just like a goofy comedy, and he just knows how to navigate those tones so well.
The Princess Bride is a total pastiche of fairy tales. It's sort of a movie that doesn't believe in fairy tales, and then deep down it does, and that's what's moving about it. By the end, it sucks you up in all those old-fashioned emotions about honor and true love and loving someone so much that they come back from the dead. It believes in all that stuff.